Hello, listeners. Welcome back to TubTube podcast community, where we dive into some of the world's most baffling mysteries. Today, we're going to explore a mystery that has stumped investigators, theorists, and the general public for decades. It's a story of intrigue, fear, and unanswered questions, and it's still unsolved to this day. I have made this into 5 segments, so let us begin now. On the night of February 1 SD 1959, 9 hikers ventured into the cold, snow-covered mountains of the Ural region in Soviet Russia. Their expedition was supposed to be an exciting adventure, a challenge for the young and experienced mountaineers. But within weeks, their journey would turn into one of the most baffling and chilling unsolved mysteries in history. What happened at Dyatlov Pass has haunted the world for over 60 years, and yet the truth remains exclusive. Segment 1. The expedition begins. The background. In the winter of 1959, Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old student at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, set out to lead an expedition in the Ural Mountains. Dyatlov had organized the group of 9 hikers, all of whom were experienced and seasoned outdoors people. Among them were students, athletes, and engineers, all familiar with the harsh conditions of the Russian wilderness. The team set out to reach Otorten, a mountain that lay deep within the northern Urals, a place known for its rugged beauty, but also for its brutal weather conditions. The group included both men and women, the youngest being 20 years old and the oldest, 38. They had earned their Category 3 hiking certification, a prestigious title in Soviet mountaineering, which required immense skill and experience in the mountains. On January 25th, the hikers were ready to begin their journey. Their route took them through icy forests, across treacherous snow fields, and into increasingly difficult terrain. Little did they know that they were embarking on an adventure that would become infamous, not for its accomplishment, but for the mystery that would follow. The last diary entry from the group was made on January 31st. In it, Dyatlov wrote that they were approaching the summit of Otorten. There was no indication of any danger. However, on the night of February 1st, something went horribly wrong. The group set up camp at the base of a mountain called Kalatsiakal, a name which, in the local Mansi language, translates to Dead Mountain, and by morning, the group was gone. What would be discovered weeks later left everyone in shock. Segment 2. The discovery of the abandoned tent. On February 26th, a search party was dispatched after the hikers failed to send a scheduled telegram to their university. It wasn't long before the search team stumbled upon the group's abandoned campsite. The tent was found half buried in snow, but what shocked everyone was that the tent had been slashed open from the inside. According to reports, the hikers had apparently cut their way out of the tent, leaving all their gear, including shoes and coats, behind. A sense of panic seemed to have gripped them. Why would they leave the safety of the tent in the dead of night in freezing temperatures without proper clothing? Scattered around the campsite were footprints, some leading away from the tent. Investigators would later find the bodies of the hikers, but what they discovered next would further complicate the mystery. Segment 3. The bodies and their strange condition. Several of the bodies were discovered in the snow at varying distances from the tent, some still in their socks, others barefoot. But the state of the bodies and the injuries sustained by the hikers only deepened the mystery. Some of the hikers had severe unexplained injuries, fractured skulls, broken ribs, and massive internal trauma. One hiker, Ludmila Dubanina, was found with her tongue and eyes missing. The injuries appeared consistent with the kind of force you might see in a car crash or an explosion, but there was no external bleeding. These were injuries from blunt force, but there were no signs of an assailant. What was perhaps even more bizarre was the radiation found on some of their clothing. The hikers had no apparent contact with radioactive materials, but the trace levels of radiation on their garments were enough to cause concern. How could such inexplicable injuries occur? Why were some of the hikers undressed despite the freezing temperatures? And why was there radiation found on their clothes? These were questions that no one could answer at the time, and they still remain unanswered today. Segment 4. Theories about what happened. Over the decades, several theories have emerged to explain the Dyatlov Pass incident. Let's dive into some of the most prominent ones. Theory 1. Avalanche. Avalanches are often considered unpredictable and swift, making it difficult to prepare or react in time. In some instances, hikers may not even hear the snow mass moving toward them. This could explain why the hikers did not have time to properly react. They may have attempted to flee to higher ground or tried to make it out of the tent quickly. But once outside, in the freezing temperatures, it would have been nearly impossible to survive without proper clothing, especially if they had already sustained injuries from the avalanche. However, some experts argue that an avalanche wouldn't necessarily explain the lack of snow covering the tent or the scattered bodies. The evidence does not support the idea of a full-scale snowslide that would bury the group. Moreover, for an avalanche to cause the extent of the injuries found on the hikers, it would require a very specific set of conditions that weren't observed at the site. Theory 2. Military involvement. One of the most persistent rumors is that the hikers accidentally wandered into a restricted military area, possibly a testing ground for weapons or radiation experiments. This theory gained traction after reports of strange injuries that couldn't easily be explained by traditional means. The idea that Soviet military personnel might have responded with violence or forced the hikers into an unwitting role in a testing experiment does seem plausible in the context of Cold War-era secrecy and the notorious nature of the Soviet government. One possible angle in support of this theory is the fact that radiation was found on the hikers' clothing. Some argue that the hikers might have been exposed to a radiation leak, possibly from a secret Soviet facility nearby. If this theory is true, it would mean the hikers could have been exposed to something so dangerous and unknown that they didn't know how to react. They might have fled the tent in confusion without fully understanding the threat they faced. However, there are serious flaws in this theory. Why would a group of highly trained hikers be caught unaware, especially considering the physical evidence points more toward trauma from external forces like blunt instruments? Furthermore, why would the Soviet military allow the hikers to leave the area with no serious consequences or let the bodies be discovered so easily? The theory may fit the facts in some ways, but there is no definitive proof to connect it to a covert operation, paranormal, or creature encounter. One of the more thrilling yet speculative theories involves the possibility of the hikers encountering a supernatural phenomenon or a wild animal. The Siberian wilderness is rife with tales of strange creatures, from yeti-like beasts to unexplainable phenomena that have baffled locals for centuries. In fact, the presence of blood and missing body parts, particularly the hikers' eyes and tongues, has been cited as evidence that they could have been attacked by a powerful predator, one that was not interested in the hikers' gear, but in their bodies. Some witnesses from the region, particularly among the Mansi people, have suggested that the Dyatlov Pass is cursed, that the land is home to spirits or creatures that are hostile to outsiders. The eerie conditions, the hikers' sudden panic, and the unexplained mutilation of their bodies have fed into these legends. It's a theory rooted more in folklore than in any scientific evidence, but it still captivates the imagination of those who want to believe in something beyond the rational. However, there is no evidence that any creature, even a bear, could account for the injuries sustained by the hikers. While animals may attack in the wild, the sheer brutality of the wounds, the absence of tracks or blood around the site, and the lack of any large predators in the area makes the Yeti or other creature theory highly improbable. But in the absence of clear answers, it remains an intriguing and unsettling possibility. Theory 4. Natural phenomenon. Katabatic winds and infrasound are not only natural phenomena, but they also have the potential to wreak havoc on human minds and bodies. Katabatic winds are gravity-driven air currents that can occur suddenly, and they are capable of reaching speeds that can knock a person off their feet, disorienting them. In mountainous terrain where these winds are most common, hikers may have been caught off guard, unable to properly orient themselves, even in daylight. At night, in the freezing cold, this could easily escalate into full-blown panic. Infrasound, which is a sound wave below the frequency range that humans can hear, can still have a profound effect on our bodies. These sound waves are known to cause anxiety, unease, and even feelings of dread. Researchers have theorized that infrasound generated by strong winds could have created an atmosphere of fear, compelling the hikers to flee their tent in a disoriented panic, even though it was dangerously cold outside. The strange behavior of the hikers, such as undressing and running into the wilderness, could have been a consequence of this type of natural phenomenon. Despite this, many experts point out that infrasound is a rare and localized phenomenon, and there's no clear evidence that it occurred on the night of the incident. Katabatic winds could have been a factor, but without conclusive meteorological data, it's impossible to say for certain. Still, both of these natural phenomena remain strong contenders in explaining the hikers' erratic actions. Theory 5. Internal conflict. The idea of internal conflict as a possible explanation for the Dyatlov Pass incident hinges on the psychological toll that the extreme conditions might have had on the hikers. In the days leading up to the fateful night, the group faced growing tensions, harsh weather, the constant physical strain of the journey, and perhaps even interpersonal disagreements. Could these pressures have caused a breakdown in group cohesion, leading to irrational decision-making? Psychologists have pointed out that in extreme conditions, people often experience what's known as groupthink, where the need for consensus can override individual judgment. If a conflict did erupt between the hikers, it might have led to confusion and rash actions, such as fleeing the tent without proper clothing. The extreme cold combined with fatigue would have exacerbated the situation, and it's possible that panic took over. However, this theory seems to overlook physical evidence. Some of the injuries sustained, particularly the severe blunt force trauma, suggest that something far more extreme than a simple argument occurred. Furthermore, the hikers were experienced and close-knit, and there's little indication that internal conflict was a major issue within the group. The violent and irrational behavior exhibited by the hikers doesn't fully support this theory, making it a less convincing explanation. Final segment number 5, the investigation and unanswered questions. Despite years of investigation and multiple reopenings of the case, the true cause of the Dyatlov Pass incident remains a mystery. Soviet officials conducted an initial investigation, but their findings were vague and incomplete. In recent years, Russian authorities have reopened the case, but the files remain sealed, and some documents are still classified. The lack of conclusive evidence leaves us with more questions than answers. Were the hikers caught in an avalanche? Did they stumble upon something they shouldn't have? Or is there some other explanation, one that we're still not ready to accept? After more than 60 years, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most compelling and mysterious unsolved cases in history. The unexplained injuries, the missing tongues and eyes, the strange radiation, and the eerie sense of panic that seems to have gripped the hikers, all of these remain a mystery. As time passes, new theories will continue to emerge, and new investigations may offer fresh insights. But for now, the truth remains as elusive as it was in 1959. Perhaps, in the end, the Dyatlov Pass incident is a reminder that some mysteries are simply beyond our comprehension, and that, maybe, is the most terrifying part of all. Thanks for listening to this podcast. New episodes are released every Monday through Friday, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss out. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, share, and leave a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.